welcome back to the oo27 podcast. This is episode 27. I'm your host, Elliot Orr, and today we have a lot to talk about. Israel is invading Lebanon, at least they are planning to. It is safe to say that Israel and Lebanon are at war. In a very strange kind of turn of events, Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, the owner of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, the metaverse, all that kind of stuff, he now claims to be a libertarian, to identify with the values associated with classical liberalism. If you remember, a few weeks ago, he did issue like a statement of apology to the House Oversight Committee in his involvement in censoring information during the 2020 election and pandemic relating to the Hunter Biden laptop and, you know, kind of vaccine hesitancy, misinformation kind of stuff. This is also an interesting kind of trend here with some social media owners here, and kind of going in the opposite way, surprisingly. Two stalwart defenders of free speech, or at least posing to be that way, Elon Musk and Pavel Durov of Telegram, both decided to cave in on some of their morals. And Elon Musk kind of, you know, gave in to some of the orders in Brazil, decided to censor some accounts in Brazil because they were taking away from Starlink. And Pavel Durov also gave in. He was arrested in France, and he gave up some of the things that he previously said he wasn't going to do. I'm going to get into more of that later. We're also going to talk about possible escalations in Russia. They have hinted at using nuclear weapons, which is pretty scary if you ask me. And we're also going to talk about the, you know, election a little bit, not too much today focused on the election, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. And then at the end, we're going to fire through some headlines. So you should be excited because I'm excited. And I just forgot to mention, I will also be reading a new article. Decided to start writing articles again now that I'm set up over here in the Netherlands. So this one is about why drug legalization in Portland, Oregon failed. So get excited for that. And it starts right now. All right, hello and welcome back. We're going to start off by talking about Mark Zuckerberg. He is now claiming to be a libertarian. He says that he regrets censoring the information that he censored last election and during the COVID pandemic, chiefly the Hunter Biden laptop. He downplayed this at the request of the CIA, which is clear, in my opinion, that this is election interference on the account of the CIA. Getting involved in very compromising material on the presidential candidate that they want to win. And it ended up being real. And they kind of, you know, coerced Facebook and Instagram and Mark Zuckerberg to censor this stuff. And this is the same kind of thing that happened, what was exposed with the Twitter files when Elon Musk bought Twitter. Now it's X, obviously. And this was obviously what most people were doing. It's not out of character, but he did decide to come out and apologize for this, issue a statement towards the House Oversight Committee after Jim Jordan was investigating him. And maybe he's just trying to get back on Trump's good side before Trump possibly wins in November. And he's also decided to hire a Republican PR firm to try and repair his relationship with Donald Trump. Apparently, they've been on the phone together a little bit recently, but it is very, very interesting that, you know, Mr. Zuckerberg here is deciding to possibly change his ideology. He said that he didn't like how far left his philanthropic advisors were leading him. He didn't think it really represented him. And he was obviously doing a lot of philanthropy, stuff like that. He decided to cut back on employee activism as well, which is pretty interesting. He said that after the protests of the police killing of George Floyd, that an employee asked him to resign from Facebook because of his unwillingness to moderate comments from Donald Trump. And he decided that he did not like that. He did not like people below him talking to him like that. So he's now kind of switching it up. I don't know if I believe him. I cannot really forgive him for what he was doing during the last election. That was a pretty major deal and likely had a large influence on the election. And it just happened. There was nothing that, anyone could do about it. And, hopefully that doesn't happen again this year. Will he actually kind of open up freedom of speech a little bit more on Instagram? That would be absolutely huge. So this is why I am cautiously, not totally cynically looking at this, but I don't say I'd be optimistic about this. I am not going to just come in here and say, yes, Mark Zuckerberg, all you have to say is that you're a libertarian now. He did also say classical liberalism, which is pretty similar to libertarianism. It's just a little bit less radical, in my opinion, I think. And we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that he can prove me wrong. He can pull through. And, this would be a huge ally to have on the fight for freedom. The owner of Facebook and Instagram, a huge tech billionaire, that would be massive. That would be huge. And also, if, he does end up kind of being a good person in the end, this would be a good key ally to have in the fight with AI. And speaking of tech billionaires working on AI, this is Elon Musk giving in to the Brazilian censorship orders after he initially resisted censoring and banning accounts that were part of an investigation of misinformation, hate speech, and threats against the democratic institutions of Brazil. Obviously, this judge decided to just overstep his boundaries and just ban stuff that, ban social media accounts and platforms, and also to ban VPNs. They're going to fine people like $10,000 a day to use a VPN to try and access X. So that's also just a law that this judge just created. And part of the reason that Elon gave in to these orders after a while, originally it was a very public stand. No, we're not going to give in to these orders. The judge started taking the money that Elon Musk owed the government out of Starlink's accounts. And obviously, Elon Musk is involved and is like the CEO of both companies, but there are independent stockholders of SpaceX. And obviously, I am not trying to, fight for Elon Musk here, because I definitely don't like that he just gave in to these orders. It does seem very two-faced, two-sided, trying to do something for the public opinion, but not actually following through when it really matters. That does rub me the wrong way a little bit, but I understand how he could have the corporate pressure behind him, the stockholders of SpaceX and Starlink saying, hey, this is not fair. And it is unfair of the courts in Brazil to be able to do that. They're totally separate companies. Elon Musk might be at the top of both of them, but that does not mean that they can go in there and take money out of those accounts. That is just not how it works, and is definitely kind of fascist, if you ask me. That's weird. The wind is very loud outside, so sorry if that whistling sound comes through on the microphone. I apologize for that. Anyway, Pavel Durov, he still is the CEO of Telegram, and recently he was arrested in France. If you don't know, Telegram is like I think this guy's Russian. It's like a Russian social media company, and it's like a messenger app. They do messages, and it's encrypted, it's private, and free speech. In the past, he has not given in to requests to give government backdoors or information on the people using it or what's in it, and has refused to censor stuff, and that has caused a lot of controversy. Apparently, he's friends with Macron, or has some sort of relationship with Macron. I think he's a French citizen, might be from France, I'm not totally sure. And basically, apparently Macron invited him to lunch or dinner and lured him into France, and then had him arrested once he got to France. So pretty weird. And he's out of jail now. He's not detained anymore. Sorry about that. Might cut out. And he has now capitulated. He's given in to the demands for the most part, and he's going to give the European Union and different governments access to user data, and as long as they're like valid legal requests. And this is, I'm pretty sure there's other things in here as well, but previously this was something that Telegram did not budge on. So obviously this threat of going to jail definitely influenced this, and I'm not a fan of that at all. I don't think that social media companies should be held responsible for what people say on their platforms. I think it's, a responsibility of the community to, respond to those themselves and prove why they're wrong. But that's just my opinion anyway. Doesn't really matter too much at all. And that is basically all I have to say about this little tech guru segment. Maybe this is not what I should have opened up with because there is a lot more important news here. Israel is essentially at war with Lebanon, and obviously Lebanon is Hezbollah. They recently, last week, around I think it was last week, they had a bunch of pagers and walkie-talkies that they had laced with explosives blow up. They bombed the pagers of Lebanese officials. And apparently these were straight from Taiwan. And the Lebanese officials had no idea that the bombs were in there. They were super tiny. But this did result in casualties of, non-Lebanese officials. There were thousands of pagers that exploded, and at least 37 people were killed and 3,000 were injured. And I know some of these were definitely kids because these just exploded in public areas. So there's definitely some legitimate questions on whether or not this is legal for Israel to do, if this is quote unquote terrorism or whatever like that. I definitely think that this should not be allowed and should be condemned on the world stage. It's just a very dangerous precedent to send. And while these were remote explosives that were laced into these pagers, I do think that because this brought the conversation to light, there are the ability to detonate, just smartphones, the batteries inside of smartphones. So they theoretically have the access to do this to anyone. And, if you're just happen to be in a public area with someone who has one of these, a Lebanese official who has these pagers, they're going to blow up next to you and they're going to harm you too. So it just continues to show Israel's disregard for, other people. They are labeling everyone else as a terrorist. And, there's some legitimacy behind that term, but there's also some history behind that term. And, this is arguably terroristic of Israel, who was, formed as a terrorist state when they were formed and arguably still are. If you look into this history a little bit, there is, clearly Israel was founded in the fucking 1900s. It's a very young country, and they had to go in there and invade it, take the land, kick Palestinians out of their house, and still to this day are occupying illegal settlements and continuing to push their boundaries. And what's going on now is essentially them trying to clear out the last little bits of the Palestinian, you can't even call it a state, but the little neighborhoods that they've cornered them into. They're trying to take them for themselves. And while they're at it, trying to take the rest of the Middle East as greater Israel. They're using the United States as a pawn for this. And the United States is continuing to involve itself. They're going to send troops. They're going to send help. They're going to send weapons. And this will be a greater escalation. Once Lebanon and Israel are at war, Iran will probably join soon. And while we're at it, we're just deciding to continue escalations with Russia by allowing Ukraine to strike inside of Russia with American and British weapons, which Putin has said will lead to a nuclear response. Whether or not Putin is being serious, this is a very terrifying thing to hear. There is no reason to still be escalating this war. Ukraine, I don't see how they could win this war. And, I'm not even sitting here saying I want Russia to win this war. I'm just saying, how is Ukraine going to win this war when there's no one else left to fight? They are at the end of this. What they need to do now is protect the lives that are left, protect the land they have left, and sue for peace. But the West will not let them do that. We're going to continue sending them money as we just did. I think we just sent them 87 billion. Sorry, this was to Israel. But Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, was visited by Zelensky this week and was seen signing, autographing artillery shells, signing weapons of war that he's going to give to another country to possibly start World War III. This is not a war that I want to die fighting in. I do not want to die fighting in the Middle East. I do not want to die fighting in Taiwan. I don't want any of it. We need to step back. We need to take a realistic look here, and we need to treat other countries like we want to be treated. We have to respect other countries' boundaries. We have to respect them. We have to open up markets to trade with them, and that is for the betterment of everyone, right? And I don't think that this is going to happen under Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Obviously, I don't think Joe Biden is the one who's making these decisions right now, but whoever is making these decisions for Joe Biden, This is not going to work out well for America or the American people. And I am very, very worried about that. Don't like it one little bit, but we'll see. Anyway, I am going to now start talking about my drug legalization article. I'll be right back. All right. Hello. Welcome back. So I just published my first article in a while. I know it's been a bit, but I've just been busy trying to get set up, and it takes a little bit of time to research these and write things. So I'm obviously from Portland, Oregon. I'm studying in the Netherlands right now, but this is an article I just wrote. I was trying to keep it short, so I wish I could have gone into a little more detail, but I just didn't want it to be too long. So this is why drug decriminalization in Portland failed. In April 2024, Oregon House Bill 402 was signed into law. This measure reversed the portion of Measure 110, which was passed in 2020, which decriminalized drugs in small quantities after 4 years of disastrous results. As a Portland native, I initially supported this, hoping it would prioritize treatment and rehabilitation while promoting personal freedoms and bringing the war on drugs to an end. Portland hoped to follow Portugal's then seemingly successful model, but unfortunately, Portland's experiment with drug decriminalization had the opposite effect. Overdose deaths rose 384% from 2019 to 2023, and 2024 is looking to be worse. And if you actually take this number from 2018, the number is 500. It's over 500% of an increase. And with 4002 in effect, the estimates suggest that there's going to be an additional 1,333 new convictions this year related to drugs. And this is actually a 16% drop compared to 2018 and 19, which was before 110 was passed. And this proves that the entire experiment was not necessary to reduce convictions and obviously totally failed to prevent overdose death. Oregon's failure in drug decriminalization resulted due to a lack of treatment and rehab facilities, a corrupt homeless industrial complex, an underfunded police force, and the refusal to prosecute legitimate crime, and additionally, an unprecedented flow of fentanyl. To properly understand Oregon's failed experiment, it's important to first examine the homelessness crisis plaguing the country. Oregon taxpayers have thrown more than $1 billion at the problem over the last few years alone, and it seems that the problem has only gotten worse. Since 2020, homelessness in Oregon has increased by 22.5%. Despite a rise in homelessness, Multnomah County has only spent $10 million of its $41 million budget as of July 2024. Clearly, the current plan is not working. We've thrown over $1 billion in recent years with no results. Why? The problem is the homeless industrial complex. In simple terms, the homeless industrial complex is the people, organizations, and government committees who are profiting off of the homelessness crisis, and in turn have no incentive to fix the problem. The CEO of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Association, Dr. Valencia Adams, makes $430,000 a year, which is more than Joe Biden makes. While this is one of the most most extreme examples of individual profit, there's a lot of others that exist. Additionally, the homelessness crisis gives politicians a platform to run on, as well as statistics and talking points for their re-election campaign. Money is allocated to programs which keep people comfortable on the streets rather than those which prioritize helping addicts get clean and find more permanent solutions. This is because the nonprofits involve themselves into politics, supporting the candidates that support them. Another aspect of the homeless industrial complex is the bureaucracy behind it. Depending on the city or service, multiple entirely different organizations or departments are responsible for different parts of the same process, such as housing, where one organization is responsible for building, another for managing, another for outreach, etc. This creates complications, miscommunications, and makes it hard to quickly get people off the street. Kevin Dahlgren, a boots-on-the-ground activist and journalist helping the homeless, describes this on the Rational in Portland podcast. He says that he has been very close to securing apartments for homeless individuals just for somebody else in the process to mess it up. Somebody from a different department has to fill out a form, for example, and does not do it in time or fills it out incorrectly, and this prevents the person from getting the apartment. These are the kind of things that have led the homeless population not to trust the government or anyone's help at all. Obviously, better solutions exist, but they're not being explored. At what point is putting all of the homeless in hotels cheaper than the current solution? Clearly, the governments have no problems with sheltering, insane amounts of illegal immigrants with billions of dollars of taxpayer money across the country, but they also feed them and provide opportunities for them. And this demonstrates that there's no government desire to actually end homelessness, only a desire for profit and job security. Measure 110 was intended to follow the footsteps of Portugal, whose drug decriminalization program was successful in reducing overdose deaths and serious crime for many years based on prioritizing treatment and rehabilitation compared to incarceration. In Portland, however, treatment facilities were not built before the decriminalization and in the many cases were never built at all. Dahlgren says that only one program has been opened since the measure passed, and that 90% of addicts that he talks to have never been approached by an outreach worker. Instead, so-called harm reduction was the focus, where activists in NGOs give homeless drug users clean needles, pipes, and foil to use drugs such as heroin and fentanyl. Due to the non-service provision, these activists refuse to offer treatment to addicts while providing them with said supplies because it creates, quote, a power dynamic that further reinforces a system of oppression, end quote. Harm reduction clinics often have signs encouraging and instructing drug use. And additionally, these same activists harass people like Dahlgren who try to empower rather than enable, claiming that it is the homeless person's right to be doing drugs in the street. And this is something that we as libertarians must grapple with, how to fix the homeless and drug crisis while respecting individual liberty. We must also consider whether or not public drug use is an aggression against the rights of other citizens directly or via drug-related crime. The social justice-focused approach does not allow for an honest reflection of the problem. In January 2024, the Oregon Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission sent recommendations to reduce overdoses, citing increases in Black and Native American overdoses while ignoring the 900% increase of Caucasian overdose deaths, which was larger than the other two combined, allocating funds to only a small portion of those in need. The focus on social justice has prevented people from interacting with drug users other than to administer Narcan. Couple this with the defunded police force and progressive soft on crime prosecutors, and Portland has become a crime and drug infested city. Rather than examining the root causes of homelessness and addiction, nonprofits began to blame the entire problem on capitalism, taking the responsibility to fix it off themselves. Dahlgren says that they view the homeless as victims, and that, quote, we eventually enabled to the point of dependency, and dependency is profitable. Drug decriminalization in Oregon failed to accomplish any of its original goals and was overturned in 2024. This policy failed for a variety of reasons, chiefly harm reduction over treatment and rehab, woke ideology, the homeless industrial complex, and ineffective and corrupt government spending. Despite the massive amount of tax dollars thrown at the problem, it's failed to get better. A new direction is needed. People like Kevin Dahlgren, who build relationships and trust with the homeless by treating them as people rather than victims, have continued to show signs of success. If you give a man to fish, he will eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for life. This must be the focus. Dahlgren says that, quote, we will end this humanitarian crisis not with big budgets or unrealistic utopian fantasies, but by empowering people to reach their fullest potential, end quote. And that's my article I just wrote. It is on X. It's also on my Substack, so you can go read it there if you want. See some more links for some further reading. But it is a very big problem. I will say in Europe, it is a lot better. It doesn't seem like fentanyl has really spread across here as much as it has in America. And I have heard from my people still in Portland that the problem is getting a little bit better. There's less people outside doing drugs now since 110 was reversed. But we will have to see how it continues to progress and how this problem ends up getting worse or being solved over the next couple years. And I will definitely keep talking about it. So yeah, that's it for that. And come back right after this for the next segment. All right. Hello. Welcome back. Last segment today. I'm just going to talk about some headlines. This is one of the biggest headlines this week is Diddy. Diddy got arrested and people are calling him the Black Epstein. We'll see if he actually ends up getting suicided like Epstein did. But obviously, Diddy was arrested this week for having a huge blackmail ring with a bunch of the people in Hollywood in the music industry, calling these things freak-offs, where they would just do a bunch of crazy things to like male commercial sex workers. I'm sure there were some kids involved as well. They found 10,000 bottles. Sorry, maybe not 10. I think it was just 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Still absolutely ridiculous. And pretty much everyone seems to be involved with this. There's a lot of people scrubbing their social media accounts. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. But it is very telling to see that this just exists across every famous person. You know, obviously Epstein was the one for politics, and now Diddy is in for the music industry. So that's huge. I'm not going to cover that one too much, but there's definitely a lot of people who have been covering this very well. I suggest you go look into Ian Carroll's video on Diddy explaining all that, because he does a very good job as always. And I'm going to continue on. The FBI visited the house of Jeremy Kauffman, and they picked the wrong house to visit. He is a member of the Free State Project over in New Hampshire, trying to, create a libertarian state. And they're coming here to talk about a X post he made, and he just stood them up. I'm going to try and play the video, but I don't know where my phone went, so I'm not going to play the video. But you can definitely go find it. It's really cool. He just is like, hey, you guys should be ashamed of yourself. Starts talking about how much money they're making, and they just leave. They get embarrassed and leave. So very, very cool to see that. And he went on Dave Smith's show and talked about that, and talked about some other stuff as well. Very interesting. The subcommittee on oversight proves that Donald Trump requested the National Guard troops on January 6th, and the Pentagon delayed it, and the Biden admin hid it. So this is obviously huge in the narrative of Donald Trump's insurrection. And also, another country we could go to war with is Venezuela. They've arrested 3 Americans for trying to overthrow their government, which is pretty crazy. Germany has halted their arms exports to Israel. The Lebanon was dropped with leaflets from Israel saying that people need to evacuate the area. Totally crazy. And the USA has asked its citizens to leave Lebanon because Israel may be about to declare war. Russia is going to sign a strategic partnership with Iran. The United States is going to send $8.7 billion to support Israel's ongoing military efforts in the Middle East. Obviously, I am not happy with that. Mark Cuban says that the mainstream media is not what you think it is. The mainstream media actually leans right. So this is just a delusion that people like this live in. They say that the mainstream media leans right. Yes, you heard that correctly. They lean right. And maybe, actually, you could be right, because Kamala Harris is actually a lot further right than people think. So, maybe that's what he's talking about. There was a hacker on the Patrick Bet-David show that hacked into a voting machine and could change everything. He said, if this had been an election, I could have gone into the database and, for example, changed the votes. He said, I could add a new candidate who is not even on the ballot, and it doesn't matter, because if you have control over the system, you can do anything you want. So obviously insane. Just with a pre-prepared USB stick, he could do this. The DOJ Inspector General suggests that there was a number of FBI spies involved in January 6th, so a lot of new information coming out about January 6th. The ex-CDC director endorses Trump and admits that Robert F. Kennedy got everything right. The Representative Stacey Plaskett admits that the DOJ and Facebook are weaponized to go after people with opposing views. She admits this from the opposite way, like she's trying to say it's a good thing, but she does admit it. The ex-COVID czar of New York City hosted a drug-fueled sex party, and he was hired by Sega Technologies to help sell the monkeypox drug. He admitted this on an undercover video, and this obviously sounds a lot like Diddy. The Gallup poll is showing bad news for Democrats. It shows that Republicans now have the upper hand in several key areas that have historically influenced presidential elections. In response to Iranian threats, Trump has said that we are going to blow your largest cities in the country itself to smithereens. Pretty wild. His assassin, Ryan Routh, his son, was arrested for child pornography. Pretty weird and interesting maybe there. I don't totally know what to say about that. U.S. lawmakers plan for a possible mass casualty event, proposing a constitutional amendment to replace members quickly and change various lines of succession in a national crisis. The U.S. will send additional troops to the Middle East amid escalation between Israel and Hezbollah. This is from Associated Press, so totally confirmed on that. Then that is all from X this week. I have some more stories I'm going to talk about here. The mayor of New York City, Mayor Eric Adams, is indicted on bribery and fraud charges. He was apparently making or accepting illegal campaign contributions from foreign sources, and he's being called to step down. apparently his bribes included luxury travel benefits from a Turkish official needing regulatory assistance. So pretty weird. Keir Starmer is telling Israel and Hezbollah to agree to a ceasefire, but not for one in Ukraine, obviously. North Carolina removes 747,000 voters from voter rolls, citing ineligibility. Ukraine is getting $8 billion from aid in Ukraine, and one of them is going to be signed by Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. So that's going to be, pretty interesting. Sorry, guys, this is a pretty short episode. I'm not sure if you guys enjoy those more or not, but I appreciate you guys if you made it all the way to the end. And yeah, have a good night, guys. Thank you.